So, Sonic Frontiers is finally here. It's been here for a good while, and I've been playing it over the past couple of months. When it finally came out, it just clicked with me that this game has everything that I've been wanting in a Sonic game for the past 10 years. Pretty much ever since Unleashed, which is one of my favorite Sonic games. But it's not exactly original to say that the Boost games sort of declined. You know, Colors was like just more linear and more simple, and it had a lot of gimmicks to it, and it took the focus away from just the core platforming that I really enjoyed from the Unleashed daytime stages. And even the Werehog stages, even though that is also a gimmick, it's still focused around gameplay and combat, which Frontiers has plenty of, and seeing how we've been sort of stuck in this Boost era for the past 10 years has been really interesting to look back on now that we're out of it, sort of. I mean, we're still in it, but Frontiers was the most different Boost game. I can't even really call it a Boost game, even though it has Boost in it. It just doesn't feel like Unleashed, where you hit the Boost button and you're just locked going forward, and whatever happens sort of happens. This was very much so more freeing and open, and felt more like if Sonic Adventure had a boost mechanic, that's what Sonic Frontiers is to me. It's the marrying of those two ideas that came together and really made a fun game for me, and a really enjoyable experience overall. There's one specific element that I noticed. It's like with each island, you're going around, you're collecting Chaos Emeralds, but to get the Chaos Emeralds, you need a certain amount of items, and it really reminded me of something. An experience I had a long time ago, and that was with Sonic R. So for the hundreds of thousands of people who haven't played Sonic R, or maybe just heard of it or saw gameplay of it but never played it, that was my absolute favorite Sonic game as a kid. You know, growing up, my first console was the GameCube, and that was my first game, and that was my first experience. And what it made me realize is that it's really simple to make a good Sonic game. The main element you need is a sense of freedom to be able to go and do what you want. But that doesn't necessarily mean open world, because Sonic R is certainly not open world. It has an open linear type race design where it's like there's different paths to get to one place, and that's like the finish line, which is also the starting line. So it just kind of loops back around itself, but in the midst of those levels, there's multiple pathways, and there's these little areas around the map that you need a certain amount of rings to get to, and in there is a Chaos Emerald. And this is totally an optional part of the game. It didn't really force it on you. It was just like, hey, this is here, and if you can do the challenge, if you can get the rings, and you can go in there, you can maybe unlock Super Sonic if you collect all 7, right? So that was the similarity I noticed when I was playing Frontiers, is that, oh, this is reminding me of Sonic R. All those hours and hours as a kid playing Sonic R, and not understanding why I enjoyed the experience so much. Because, I mean, look, the game is rough around the edges, but for its time, it was great. Of course, it's before my time. I played it on a collection on the GameCube, but I still had a really special experience with it. I think it is because it offers that same sort of classic Sonic freedom, where it's like, hey, here's a special ring. If you want to go in and get that, that's a thing you can do. That's your choice. You don't have to have Super Sonic. You don't even have to have Hypersonic. You can just be regular Sonic and play the game and beat it, and you don't, it'll be fine, right? It's optional, and with Sonic R, it kept that classic mentality of like, here it is, there's the opportunity. If you want to go get that, you can, but there's no pressure to do so. With Frontiers, it's a little bit different. You do have to collect the Chaos Emeralds, because with the specific boss you're fighting, there's just no way, apparently, according to the game, that Sonic could defeat the Titans without Chaos Emeralds. So fair enough, right? But I think if they were able to make a game where maybe Sonic could beat those Titans or some sort of boss battle without the Chaos Emeralds, and the Chaos Emeralds would just make it maybe a little bit easier. Maybe there's like a special soundtrack that'll play if you do have Super Sonic, but if you don't, then it's just the regular music. Some sort of game like that, I think, could have a lot of potential. That way, it just gives you the option. Maybe it's a completely different boss battle without Super Sonic than it is with him. And I know that's like designing 2 different boss battles for one boss, but I think it might be interesting, maybe just for a game or two, to see that sort of mechanic. Maybe in the sequel to Frontiers, I don't know if that's what they're doing next, but maybe for the next adventure game. I don't know if they're going to do a Sonic Adventure 3. I mean, that'd be a pretty good mechanic, is just you could get a totally different ending if you don't get the Chaos Emeralds along the way. I think that'd be pretty interesting to see. But just the options being able to have a different experience each time you play the game and not necessarily requiring that. But going back to Sonic R, you know, you got to use that ability in the races, which is totally broken, by the way. I mean, I feel so bad for all those other characters because Sonic was the only one who could transform in that game and he would just blow everyone away. And one of my favorite ways to play that game is just get the Chaos Emeralds first, then go back with Super Sonic and unlock all of the metal characters like Metal Sonic, Metal Knuckles, and Eggman and all that stuff. So I just really always loved that about that game, and I really hope that we get to see more optional things like that. In terms of like the challenge to get the Chaos Emeralds, yeah, maybe in Sonic R it's a little bit too easy. I mean, sure, that game was much harder for me as a kid, but now I could beat it in like an hour, maybe less if I really wanted to.
I have been playing Sonic R for 30 minutes!
It's not a very long game. You know, again, I think there is value, whether it's hard or not to obtain these Chaos Emeralds, just to have that option in there. And you know, I think this could be an interesting opportunity for Sonic Team because they've been referencing in their mobile games Dark Spine Sonic and all these other like transformations for Sonic, and maybe if there was things you could collect to access these transformations, these other forgotten sort of transformations, and have special abilities, like for Dark Spine Sonic being able to use some sort of fire ability and increased strength in the combat, and obviously flight, or you could unlock the Werehog by collecting some Dark Gaia crystals or something like that, and yeah, you'd be a little bit slower with the combat, but you could have increased strength and more movesets and all that sort of stuff. So I think there's a lot of potential for old transformations coming back as well. I know that's a stretch, and they're probably never going to do that. I am aware of that this is sort of a out there idea, but I'm just saying, if they're putting Dark Spine Sonic in the mobile games, they clearly are still aware of his existence. They're aware of the Werehog, they're aware of all these other forms that Sonic has, and they can still make a new transformation. I know that's kind of risky, you know, because that can easily go wrong, but I'm open to things, you know. I think that's what I'm getting at here, is that it's like Sonic transforming and having different abilities, or it could even be something like unlocking different characters. Like if they don't want to do Dark Spine Sonic, well then let us play as Blaze and she can have that firepower and stuff like that. So I think unlocking new characters and Chaos Emeralds both together is why I love Sonic R. I know it's a very simple game, but I mean, I kind of have an affinity for simple games that can just be beaten in an hour. There's something really, there's something kind of nice about that, with games being so unbelievably long these days. I could sit down any day and beat Sonic R in less than an hour and be done with it, and I think that there is some value to that. And again, that's also what I love about Frontiers, because it doesn't force you to sit there and play the game for a long amount of time. You know, you can stop at any time that you want, save the game, and come back in, you know, and there's always more stuff to do and more stuff to explore. I wish the worlds had a little bit more to them and they were a little bit more intriguing. I know everyone has said this already, but I think a city map, like some sort of giant city, would be really cool to see. My vote is Grand Metropolis from Sonic Heroes, because, I mean, if you look at that skybox texture, that city is massive and dense and has so much diversity in terms of like all the different locations it could have and different sections of it. So I don't know, if they're gonna bring back any city level, I feel like Grand Metropolis, being a very pleasing to the eye, futuristic type city, would be a really fun one to do. And but yeah, you know, just more maybe an open world San Francisco, and you know, I think going back to the locations that they've done before, but doing an open world Frontiers style take on it, to me would be more interesting than just another like 5 tech demo lands, you know, that just look very plain and they all look like you know, Windows background. I'd like something a little bit more dense with population, NPCs to talk to. Like basically you combine a Sonic level with like the Unleashed hub worlds and Adventure hub worlds, and you just make this massive area. That is my dream for a Sonic game, and it all being connected. And yeah, I mean, that'd be brilliant. I would love that. So I mean, I think that's why not a lot of people understand Sonic R because on the surface it's just like this super simple game, and if you don't know much about it, like you can use the triggers to turn better, and I swear, everyone was always making fun of the controls, but they're not actually that bad if you just know the controls, you know, so you can't criticize them if you don't know them. But enough of my Sonic R defense. Look, if I didn't grow up with that game, I probably wouldn't care, I wouldn't bat an eye, but it's because, you know, it was a part of my childhood, so I understand I have a bias, but I feel like it gets too much heat, you know, over the years, and similar to 06, I mean, look at the love that game gets. It's getting completely remade by fans, you know, with P06, and the other 06 project for generations. I mean, you know, so I think even with the worst of the Sonic games, there's still something to get from it. There's still some potential. Except for Sonic Boom. That game can go fuck.